So I'm Sakina Ballard, and I'm a British Asian actress.
Wonderful. Sakina, were you born in the UK?
No, I wasn't. I was born in East Africa, in Tanzania, in Dar es Salaam, and I lived there for the first 6.5 years of my life.
Gosh, that's significant.
Yeah.
So you remember quite a bit.
Yeah, so nearly all my childhood memories are actually of Tanzania, and then moving to London when I was 6.5. Those seem to have merged into like 6 years of just one memory, really.
Yeah.
Of
Well, obviously they're both exactly the same, Dar es Salaam and London.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I have lots of memories of my sort of experiences there because I grew up in Dar and then in a game park and a coffee farm, so I had some varied experiences. And then coming to London, I've always just sort of lived in the southeast, and maybe that's why it's just kind of gone. Okay, that's the London memory, and that's.
Always within London.
Yes, yeah. I moved to briefly Shepherd's Bush when I was at university, so I went to the went west.
It's the nether regions.
Yeah, and other than that, I've always lived in southeast London. Yeah.
Brilliant. So where would you say that you grew up then? I mean, that's quite a distinct story, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say I guess I still feel that I did a lot of my growing up in Tanzania, and that's where I had a lot of my sort of larger family base and a sense of kind of being connected to somewhere more so than maybe when I lived in London. So probably, so I did a lot of my growing up there. Yeah.
That must have obviously fashioned you quite a bit. I mean, that's quite a powerful experience, especially as varied as you had it, living in a game park and a coffee farm.
Yeah.
As well as Dar itself.
Yeah, I think it has. And it was really, I noticed when I moved to the UK that there was a real sort of sense of change for me. There was a real, I didn't know this life at all. It was like completely alien. And I lived with, my stepfather's British, so we lived with his family. And growing up in a Bahura Muslim community in Dar, and then coming to like Forest Hill in like, you know, on a bus and just growing up here where everything was just so different. It was, I really kind of took me many years to get a sense of who was I in this place. You know?
So that was an early question for you from early on, actually.
Yeah, that's always been sort of there hanging around.
So with this genre of British South Asian theatre, obviously you've been involved in theatre generally, but how is it that you became involved in British South Asian theatre rather, and have you always been an actress within that?
I didn't start acting within that area of that genre of theatre. I started in a more sort of generic, you know, drama classes, and my early experiences were really working in sort of youth theatre and theatre in education and that sort of thing. I came to it really through becoming professional. So once I came out of drama school, I sort of found that that's the area that somehow everyone sort of said, oh, you should go and look at this, and you should look at these companies, and so it sort of was presented to me rather than me sort of always going out and seeking it. And certainly when I found myself being a jobbing actor and auditioning, they were the places that were willing to see me and work with me and sort of give me opportunities to explore my acting and my sort of art, really. Yeah.
And what was it that inspired you to participate in theatre or performance at all?
I remember the thing that really inspired me was the first show I ever saw in the West End. And if I say it, it's going to sound really naff. You go, oh my God, what did she used to watch? But I went to see, I'd never seen anything really like this. And I went with my ballet school when I was like 7 to see Me and My Girl with Phil Wilmot, I think he was in it.
Okay. Who's he?
He's like an 80s actor or a presenter or something. I remember just being like, this is incredible. It was a musical, and I was just like people dancing and singing and having a great time, and I was just like, it was massive, the stage was big, all the lights were down, the whole feeling of it. And I walked away and I was like, Mum, can I get the cassette for Christmas? She got me the cassette, I had the programme, I learnt every song, I knew every dance. And yeah, I remember just feeling like this is amazing. Everyone's left feeling something great. You know, we all left like with a big sort of smile on our face, and I just felt that this was amazing. And then I loved dancing anyway, so I carried on sort of dancing, and then I found drama classes, and I just thought this was a way of expressing and being, and somehow all those other things that maybe questions growing up in London in the 80s about myself, they didn't matter in this area. They didn't, you know, it didn't matter when I was watching the theatre or going to see a big musical or doing a drama class or doing a dance. It didn't matter about all those other questions I had about myself. It was just free to just be and express and have fun. And so that's sort of what got me hooked, and that's how I got into kind of theatre generally. It was just me and my girl, and then and then singing along and just joining in drama, really.
And then you went to drama classes and then drama school. Yeah,
drama classes, and then did a degree in history, and then worked for a little while. So I worked for like the Home Office Citizenship Initiative and sort of temped, you know, doing admin work. And it was just always there. It was always just niggling at the back of my head. So at 25, I went back to drama school, did an MA, and and then became professional.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So you, even though you had that interest as a teenager going to drama classes, you first chose to do a conventional degree, should we say?
Yeah.
And then and work within that field for a little while.
Yeah.
But then it pulled you back. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it did. I wanted to do a drama GCSE. And I guess in some ways, sort of, my mum was very much into sort of getting good academic results and
of course,
being quite academic. And because I already did drama on a Saturday, so sort of balance was, well, you already do your drama, so maybe take something else at GCSE. And so I did. I took art instead of drama in that sort of in that sector. And of course, because I didn't take drama GCSE, I couldn't do drama A-level, and because I didn't do drama A-level, I couldn't do drama at university. So it was sort of, that's just how it happened. So so it wasn't an avenue I could pursue at that time. But once I had a degree, I just sort of thought, well, I'm not doing anything with a history degree, and there's something I really want to do. So
what was your time like working with the Home Office?
That was really interesting, actually. I really enjoyed that. And I really... I started at the time that they introduced them, these citizenship ceremonies, so it was all new, and it was fascinating. It was fascinating interviewing people and being part of this day for people who had gone through a process and they were becoming British citizens, what that meant for them, and just hearing people's experiences and their journeys of how they got to, you know, all to be in this one room at the same time. And yeah, I loved that job. That was a great job.
It sounds as though your history degree and your work there at the Home Office has kind of, it must have informed the actor you then became.
Yeah, I guess so. I think what it showed me, and what I've always sort of had a sense of for myself, is that in a way, what we do as actors goes beyond maybe our own sense of identity, and what we're really appealing to is the humanity in everyone, that underneath everything that we kind of put on as our layers of identity of, you know, I speak this language, or I believe in this, or I know this about myself, that we actually all intrinsically go through an experience that's just human, and we have feelings that are all the same, and we have similar desires, and so there's a just sort of general thread that runs through everyone, that the instinct to survive, to love, you know, to, I don't know, just to be human. And I always used to recognise that, you know, reading history books and things, that these were just people, and their circumstances were different, but they were still just people. And the same when I would stand in a room full of people becoming British citizens, they were from, you know, across the world, and yet they were all wanting this one thing, and they were all just people beyond their experiences, you know. Oh yeah, I guess.
An experience you've shared yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
That brings us wonderfully into the next question.
Great.
That what does then being British South Asian mean to you?
I find that really difficult to answer, because on one level, I guess it means other people's perception of me. On another level, for me, it means the thing that maybe I feel I'm not fully. So an identity I once might have held on to when I was younger, that was then moving here and not being able to continue speaking the language of my family and that sort of thing, because I used to speak Gujarati and I don't anymore. And so there was always a sense that it was a sort of culture or an identity that I didn't quite belong to. I guess, yeah. So I don't really know. I don't really know the answer to that one. I'm sorry.
Fine, don't be sorry at all. But would you characterise your work then as being British South Asian?
Often, and that's the thing. Yeah, often. As I said, often because it's been an area of work that might have been created with I guess, in my perception, under an umbrella, that sort of umbrella, that's given me the opportunity to work. But also the experiences I've had, I feel connected to the work I've done as well. So it's not just sort of an alien concept that I'm having to learn. So certainly when I've, been a part of plays that were written within communities, I felt very much connected to that and understanding of where that work has come from and the message that it's trying to relate to its audience and connect, and how it's trying to connect to its audience. So yeah, I would say that I feel the work that I partake in is, yeah.
Do you think, while we're talking about British South Asian theatre though, do you think for it to still exist as a distinct genre is still useful?
I don't know. My instinct says probably not. And I don't know if I feel sort of that I'm knowledgeable enough on it or an authority enough to say, but I sort of feel that in a way, no, because I think that what theatre and even, British South Asian theatre looks to create is really more universal, and even in trying to get, I know sort of work I've done, that the big thing has been trying to engage with an audience that maybe don't normally engage with theatre, and that's often the kind of the aim of the work that I've been a part of. And again, I don't know if it's always about giving people what they already know, or showing them or telling them stories that they might have already felt. I think that there is something in theatre that could be more open and more accessible than having to give it an identity per se, because I think it cuts certain audiences off by having that sort of title, and I think sometimes it can also misrepresent the kind of the kind of humanity and the stories that are being told, which are really universal, stories of families or stories of cultures or kind of, I don't know, I just sort of feel there's something else there that is more universal than having to give it a title, and I don't know how relevant that title really is, if and whether or not it really fits what it's doing. I don't know if it's, I don't really know how that title sits really anymore. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of the work that's being created under this umbrella, or that's been created so far at least, under the umbrella of British South Asian theatre, do you feel there's a common thread between all that work? Common thread in terms of the stories they tell and the audiences they reach?
I would say I don't feel there is, no. Because it's vast, you know, I see things that are kind of like, you know, musical influences and stories that are really old and ancient, and then I see something really modern written, and then I see all sorts coming under an umbrella that is, yeah, that I don't know if that umbrella really catches it all. And I think sometimes by giving it that umbrella, it does disconnect people who could relate or could access those stories from going to see them, because they might think it's for someone else. So I think it can limit the audiences depending on where it's trying to target, really. And it should be for everyone. That's what I think. Everyone should go and experience, you know, a bit of magic when they can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming back to your own artistic journey then. So you've already had quite a varied and diverse career, both within theatre and outside of it. What was the reaction of your friends and family then to you working in theatre?
Very supportive. With my immediate family, they were very supportive, and with perhaps sort of a larger circle of family, if we go out a couple of layers, it's a bit more like, well, what's that really, and you know, is it a proper job, and are you going to be on EastEnders soon?
Yeah.
You know, have you got your job in EastEnders? No. Okay, well, we'll wait till you do that, and then come and tell us you're an actress. You know. But yeah, generally it's been supportive and probably a little bit indifferent, I would say. Actually, there hasn't been a massive sort of, oh, this is fantastic that you've gone out there and you've pursued a dream. It's a bit more like, and conscious of what I do, and is it going to be okay for all the family to see and know about this work? You know, is this going to be all right? But yeah, generally friends very supportive, and family, yeah, supportive, and not unsupportive, I would say. Actually, they're not unsupportive, which is,
including your mother, who was wanting the academic trajectory for you. That's great.
Yeah, she's always come to see the work, but she's very mum about it. She's, you know, she'll just go, "Oh, you were great! I love seeing you up there." You know? Yeah. And yeah, so she's just been a very supportive mum in that sense. But yeah, she's not stopped it. I think the only thing that my family feel is, you know, how do you make a career out of something like that? And all families feel that, you know. I guess all parents are like, are you going to be okay? Are you going to be stable? Can you pay your rent? Can you know, all these things. But beyond that, I haven't had a lot of feedback. Maybe they just don't want to talk about it. That's why they just don't say anything. They just ignore the fact that I do it and don't cause any problems. So just go and do what you're going to do.
One of the questions being asked here, as part of that question also, is whether along your artistic journey there's ever been at all any trauma, and if there has, then how has that been transferred into positive memory, if at all?
And what do you mean by that?
I suppose what I understand from that question is whether along your artistic journey, was there anything that you'd classify as trauma, as something that happened within your life, it may be personal or professional, that has had, you know, that has been eventful or impactful enough for it to be considered trauma in your life, I suppose.
Okay.
And whether that's affected, and how that's affected you and your work, and how you've been able to transform that, if at all.
Okay. That's a really interesting question.
I suppose for me what the question's alluding to, the transformative power of working in theatre, and whether if theatre is such a transformative experience for the audience, as you said it was for you when you were a child, is it also something that the practitioners can access?
Yeah. It's really interesting you asked that. And it's a really interesting question. If I've understood your meaning of it, I'd say yes, as a short answer. Because I think for me, the trauma came before maybe the theatre in a way. So certainly I found moving to a new country and having to assimilate to a whole new life, and in a way having to learn to let go of the life that I'd understood myself to be up until that point, fairly traumatic. And that was something that stayed with me for a long time. So it wasn't just something that happened when I was sort of 6.5 and then I went, okay, well that's it now, this is my life. It was a process in myself of, where do I fit in? Do I belong here? Am I part of anything? So that in itself was quite a big event, and it's something that stayed with me for a very, very long time. And still now, there's those bits stay with me, understanding who I am, how other people perceive me, what my expectations are of that. And for me, theatre and learning the craft or the art of acting was completely the sort of the positive, transformative experience that you've just described from that trauma. So in a way, that trauma sort of led me to that place, if you want to call it trauma. That experience led me to that place. But the journey, my artistic journey, has completely been about, it's almost been like a healing journey in a way, and it's been a very, for me personally, a very spiritual journey. It's been about learning about myself, it's been about accepting myself, it's been about finding my place for myself in where I am and who I am and my sense of identity and what I can offer, my voice. I mean, in a very kind of practical way, learning the art of acting through drama school and classes was about finding my physical body, finding my actual voice, my opinions, the confidence to express myself and what I thought and felt. And so I think my artistic journey, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot recently, which is why I thought it was a really interesting question that you asked me that now. I think that in itself has been the positive thing, and it has completely, in a way, been the thing that saved me, that kept me going. And I still do, constantly reassess within that journey where I am, what am I offering, what else is out there for me, what else can I try, and how is that going to impact on me as a person and me as an artist. And those two things I think are very, very much interlinked. I think who I am and the artist are the same thing. So wherever I'm at, that's my work, that's where it is. And so I think that, yeah, completely, it's got a very powerful ability to change the course of the life, and then it gives the artist the power to grab that and say, this is where I want to go next, and this is where I feel, and this is where my intuition is taking me. And I think those two things are intrinsically linked. I think it's very healing and very cathartic profession.
That's beautiful, thank you. This is a particularly pertinent question for your own experience too. How would you say that your transnational experience has informed your identity?
I think it's made me more aware of being myself. Because when I had to accept that I wasn't the religion I grew up in, and I wasn't the languages I learnt to speak, and I wasn't the people I was surrounded by or the values I was taught, because all those things were changing in my life, none of those seemed to stay the same.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to learn that and to accept that. But when I accepted that, I sort of realised that I'm still me, and I've always been me through it all. So yeah, I think it's really been an acceptance of understanding that I am myself, as everyone is just themselves, and that these things that are external, these things that I would probably have held on to as a sense of who I am in the past, they were never who I was, because I'm still here and I'm still doing what I'm doing, So really about finding my own voice, finding my own being, really.
So it feels as though by moving from one culture to another and the two being so distinct, it's created something, it's created you to accept something purer within yourself
Yeah.
that works in both settings.
And because I was young when I moved from one to the other, a lot of those choices were beyond me. So they were really choices made by, the people around me. So there was a lot of letting go. There had to be letting go of the fact that when I met up with my mum's family, I no longer spoke the language. There was a letting go of the fact that I wasn't going to a mosque, anymore. And there was a letting go of the fact that I wasn't growing up within the environment that I had started my life in. And yet I was still here, and I was still me, and I was still feeling and thinking and being.
Coming back to your work a little now, we're playing tennis, if you notice, between your identity and your work.
Yeah, see that.
As Sakina Ballard, the actor,
Yeah.
what audiences do you hope to reach with your work?
I'd really like to reach audiences that have maybe not yet discovered their voice, or not discovered their voice, but that haven't yet maybe had the experience of being able to be free and as an audience find expression through work. And for me that's, particularly maybe women in certain situations, and young people who maybe are feeling disenfranchised or feeling unheard and not able to yet release their potential. So that's where I'm at the moment. We'll see.
And who have the audience has been that come to see your performances thus far?
It's been quite mixed because the work has been quite mixed. So, I've done some work where it's been, Muslim women's groups that have come, and that's been amazing because that was also facilitation projects. We got to work closely with the women that would then come and be a part of a performance and an audience. And then I've done new writing pieces, and so I think it's been really mixed. But I've also worked with, I don't know, young people. I think a bit of everyone, hopefully, a bit of everyone who's been called in that way.
And how has the work that you've done, do you feel, reflected the everyday lives of people?
I think it's some of the work has shown, I think a lot of the work actually has shown the normality of life, and that even in different situations and in what we might perceive to be different people's homes or people that aren't quite like us, that actually the activities are very much the same, and the relationships, a lot of my work has been around sort of relationships with people I've noticed recently. So, mothers and daughters, sisters, husbands and wives, that sort of thing, that it's actually these relationships, the way we relate with each other, there's a universal sort of aspect to that.
Yeah. One of the questions here is also about a complaint, I suppose, about people in the rural areas feeling as though they don't feel too connected with theatre. What do you feel about that?
It's interesting, and I can understand that, and I don't know what their experience of theatre is, because living in London it's a completely different experience. But I can see that even in my own perception, because I live in London because I want to be around where things are happening, where things are new, and there's ideas and there's inspiration and there's art everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's my perception. I don't know how true that is, but it would certainly tie in if that's how you feel.
For sure. How would you say that your work has evolved over time, particularly in the context of the changing South Asian experience in the UK?
Okay.
That's quite a big question, so I suppose we could take it bit by bit, kind of break it down, maybe. As in, I mean, the changing South Asian experience is just however you've known it, really. And that could be quite personal, if you like. Yeah.
I was thinking, I used to be really rubbish, and now I don't think I'm so rubbish. That's why I was probably the first way my work has evolved. I guess I've seen a change in the sort of roles I'm given, and the perception of myself as an actress by the people who hold the power to give us work when I'm not sort of, obviously facilitating or doing something devised. And there has been a change, because I know when I first started there was very much an umbrella, there's an identity, you are a young British actress, Asian actress, and that's the sort of stuff you go up for, and that's all you're seen for. And then I started to be seen for work that was quite modern within that umbrella, and it was, again, we're talking about relationships and new writing pieces. And then now I sort of feel that maybe there is a little bit more sort of colourblind casting going on, where I'm seen as a woman in her 30s, as a mother, and all those other roles that I play in my life that, I can play as an actor as well. I see that happening more, where it's not just this is what you get seen for. I get seen for a lot of other stuff, which is lovely. Don't always get it, which isn't so lovely, but I can see that there is a change happening there, which is exciting.
That's exciting times.
Yeah, it is. Very exciting.
And with that exciting change that I feel we're kind of at the cusp of somehow at the moment. I'm getting that from you as well.
Yeah.
Where do you feel that the state of the theatre is today? As in, where exactly do you feel either theatre generally, British theatre, or British South Asian theatre? What do you feel the state of it is today? Where do you think it's at?
That's a big question, isn't it?
It's huge. In terms of words, it's the shortest one.
Yeah, but it's asking the most, I think. The state of it. I think it's an exciting place. I think it's got a lovely journey ahead of it still, and I do feel that at the moment, maybe kind of commercial theatre is not really, from what I've seen, and when I say commercial, I mean sort of, West End, where a lot of audiences will go and a lot of people who come into London or elsewhere will go. It hasn't really made, for me, a massive leap there yet, though in terms of casting it's starting to, but in terms of its content, I think there's more new, fresh, exciting stuff that could come into it. In terms of sort of British South Asian theatre, if we're still using that term, I think it's really opening up, actually, and I see and hear of things that are going on that are no longer sort of put in a little niche box, and it's just part of, local art festivals, and it's part of big things at the, Festival Hall had a lovely thing recently, and so it's no longer sort of seen as just, this is our week of doing our Asian cultural event, that's not very fair, but if we're going to kind of go in cliches, that sort of thing. It's just being integrated as art, which is lovely.
Yeah. Do you feel that the stories and the aesthetics that have been used for contemporary British South Asian theatre, do you feel these stories and aesthetics accurately reflect the communities that they seek to represent?
I don't know. Sometimes. I think for me, sometimes there's still a little bit of the cliches and stereotypes going on, depending who the audience is and where the appeal is. And I think there is something, and this is my own personal little sort of, I guess, I don't know if it's a gripe or if it's just a feeling, there is something that hasn't quite yet been explored, which is the experience that isn't just in a box. So like, for example, that sense of, you know, I don't quite feel that I fit into any box, or if you've come from a you know, mixed heritage background, or where do you fit, and these sort of notions of identity and being, and where, you know, where you, I guess, where, I don't know, where you sort of feel you belong. I think there is something to be explored there within British Asian theatre, you know, that isn't just about the stories we've already heard, and I still feel there's a little bit more scope. Should write something really, but yeah, I yeah.
Could I push you a little further, just into going into possibly where that scope is?
It's, I guess I often speak to other practitioners, and I notice that the things that I've always felt about, you know, if you don't speak certain languages, or if, you know,
what might those languages be?
Well, like I don't speak Punjabi, I don't speak Hindi, I don't speak any Asian languages actually, but certainly I see that a lot of films, you know, I'm not considered for because I don't speak any Hindi. A lot of theatre, they're looking for Punjabi speakers. And so when you don't speak those, automatically you're not able to go out for those roles, because those pieces require that. But I sort of think, well, what about the stuff that I do fit? Because I'm not the only actress out there in that position who doesn't speak those languages, who doesn't have a sense of this is my sort of cultural heritage or cultural identity, or language identity, if you like. You know, that I don't fully feel I fit into those boxes, and I do speak to other people with a similar experience, and they sort of find a sense of maybe there's a little outside circle that isn't always involved in what's happening, but they're there and they're part of the scene, and they're part of, you know, they're part of the industry, and so they've got a story and they've all got something that's connecting them. So where is that story? Because I think that's quite a modern story as well, and I think it's quite an exciting one to explore.
In what way is it modern?
Because I think that there are lots of young people now that might come from, you know, mixed British Asian families. I speak to a lot of people who have that, who maybe haven't grown up with a very strong sense of being rooted in any particular community, and they are also part of the British South Asian scene a lot of the time. And maybe I feel it's modern because it's contemporary to me, but and I don't know, I have no concept of what, you know, the people that laid the path were doing and what their peers were experiencing. But certainly my perception is that there was a big movement and they really grafted the way, and they kind of opened up these doors for young British Asian voices to be heard at the time. But maybe those voices are also wanting to say something else now, and I don't know if that's fully being explored.
I only ask because it's fascinating. I find what you're saying fascinating. How? I mean, you alluded to it already. I think because the next question is, if the stories and aesthetics today don't serve the communities, then how could they? And I suppose what you're saying is to acknowledge what's becoming a fringe within the British South Asian theatre circuit itself.
Yeah, that's it.
Of non-Punjabi Hindi speakers.
Yeah, and those who wouldn't necessarily feel, if you ask them, you know, what's your kind of identity in a very broad sense, they wouldn't kind of go, this is what my family are from, or this is where I've grown up in, or this is what I know. That there's a bit more of a general sense of, well, I'm here and I kind of know a bit of this, but I also know a bit of this, and you know,
That is fascinating. I mean, do you think that this could be remedied by future projects that seek to particularly hone in on this, you know, the advancement, I suppose, of British South Asian theatre into the fringes? Do you think it's worth designing projects specifically for that, or do you think it's just something that's going to happen by osmosis, just by natural phenomenon?
I think it's probably something that'll happen more naturally, because those artists already exist.
Yeah.
And they're already looking to express themselves, and I don't think that the scenes that they're in and the environment they're in is closed to that. I just think it's finding the way of expressing it that becomes artistic. I think it might happen naturally.
It's been massively insightful and a greatly honest interview so far. Thank you. It's been quite a privilege speaking to you. Thank you for your generosity with that. Would you like to end, though, by telling us about any particular works of yours which you feel the most important for you?
That's really hard to say, because at the time, in the present of every piece of work, it's everything, and it says everything that I feel it should be saying, so it's hard to pinpoint. The one that comes to mind in terms of maybe the impact it had on me, in terms of my learning, my journey, the people I got to meet, and how privileged I felt to be a part of the whole process, was a project I did with a company called Yalu. It became Images of Elsewhere, and it was an ode to my sisters, and it was a piece that was verbatim piece taken from Muslim women's community groups, and I was really lucky to be a part of it for over 2 years. So all the R&D and all the different phases it went through, so the facilitation, the working with the women, then going and workshopping it, and then seeing it all the way through into its tour, and meeting again at the end of that tour a lot of the people that have been on that journey with us. And I learned a lot about myself as an artist through that as well. And so, but it's hard to say, because in every moment, it's all consuming, and it's so important.
Of course.
Yeah.
And there'll be many more too.
Absolutely. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
I'm sure. Sakina, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.